Inspired by the drama of shifting weather and the raw beauty of northern landscapes, Paula Dunn creates atmospheric paintings that sit somewhere between representation and abstraction. Working intuitively in oils and cold wax, her practice explores the emotional connection between light, land, and atmosphere. In this interview, we sat down with Paula to have a chat about her journey to becoming a full-time artist, her creative process, inspirations that continue to shape her work, and why she believes artists should stop waiting for inspiration and simply get started.
Hello, I'm Paula Dunn. I'm a landscape artist based in Bradford in West Yorkshire, and welcome to my studio here in Bingley. When I was a teenager, I went to art college, and the plan was to then go to university to do art, but couldn't quite find my way, wasn't quite sure what area of art to go into. It was the 1980s at the time, so it's very conceptual art, not something that I was really interested in. So I dropped out and then went to work in an office, and that kind of progressed, and I ended up doing degrees to help me climb the ladder in that particular career. And I always did art courses or something creative as a bit of a relaxation, kind of something to do outside of work. But that kind of gradually progressed. So probably about 18, 19 years ago, I kind of discovered oil painting. It's not something I'd been taught before. I'd previously sort of worked with textiles, and I liked the richness of the textiles and the colours that you could get. And then when I discovered oils, I was sort of like, they were fantastic. The colours, the richness, it's so many possibilities. So I went to a local college, found out how to use them, and it took off from there. I started sort of painting landscapes as a bit of a side hustle, so to speak, and started to exhibit. I think that was the scariest thing, first of all, but we have an open houses here in Saltbox where I live, so that was quite a nice, easy way to sort of ease myself into exhibiting and showing my work. And it grew, and I started exhibiting across the UK, and so it turned into a business, basically. My job also sort of expanded. I sort of went up the ladder, working at university, had quite an important, busy job, and I enjoyed it. But I knew I actually wanted at some point to become a full-time artist. I realised that the day job weren't going to pay me off to get rid of me, no matter what I did. And so I put a plan in place. It'd be about, it must be about 6 years ago now. And I realised that, my business was taking off, but there's only so much you could do at weekends and in holidays and things like that. So I actually put a business plan together, which doesn't sound very sexy at all, but it helped me sort of actually identify what steps I needed to do to be able to move into becoming a full-time artist. And that's what I did 3.5 years ago. And I haven't looked back. It's a good question, actually. I don't like a sunny landscape, let's put it this way. It's too harsh. There's sort of, it's nice to be in, don't get me wrong, it's nice to walk in a sunny landscape. I think I like the rawness of it, the bleakness of it. Where we are now in West Yorkshire, we get some really good cloud action as well, and that changeable weather really helps to emphasise the changing light on the landscape as well. And I just love the history of the land. You can see the sort of, the scars of where, industry has been and gone. All these sort of scars on the landscape just sort of build on that kind of sort of richness and depth of the landscape. And certainly in West Yorkshire, it's that sort of tension between the old industrial sort of mills against this beautiful sort of really lush green landscape in the valley, and then all that sort of barren moorland as well. The light is just fantastic with the changeable weather as well. You just get these sort of areas illuminated on the landscape, and it's just ever changing. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I do like to go down to Cornwall and places like that, but it does tend to be the places where I paint are in the north of England and in Scotland, and you know, it's that sort of bleakness. What can I say? I am a northern lass. I tend to, if people ask me to sort of paint, if they want to commission me and things like that, I always feel a little bit uncomfortable doing that if I don't know the area. So I always have to walk it and explore it. And it's not that I'm necessarily taking sketches or doing sketches or taking photographs and things like that. I'm kind of, I suppose in a way, getting to understand how the land feels, you know, where a particular path goes and how the light lands on a particular landscape as well. When I do sketches, it's just that kind of muscle memory that kind of commits the particular shape of a land to my memory. I rarely will use sketches or photographs for a painting these days. It's only if I'm trying to, you know, if I'm working on a particular project and the place has to look like the place itself. And what I find is if I am referring to sketches and photographs, my work tends to tighten up. So I have to really work hard to sort of just go with the flow and really respond to what's happening on the surface of the painting. So when I am walking the land, I guess I am committing a lot to memory in terms of how clouds are moving, how the light is moving across a landscape. When I start out a painting, I'm not necessarily thinking I'm actually going to paint where I've just walked. Those will just be sort of pushed to one side, and then it'll only, you know, I'll realise when I'm actually painting that actually this is starting to remind me of a particular place. So I'm definitely not trying to replicate what I'm seeing in front of me. My paintings are very much about the atmosphere, which is more than just the visual. It's sort of the smells, how I'm feeling when I'm walking a particular place as well. So for a long time, I basically painted with oils, and I used the kind of impasto technique, so very much working with palette knives and just troweling that paint on. And my paintings were big and they were representational, so they basically looked like what they were supposed to look like, a particular landscape. And I really wanted to loosen up my work. I wanted to move away from that and just be, you know, more experimental with my work. So I took myself off to Ireland, as you do, any excuse to go to Ireland, and did a residential with an artist, American artist called Rebecca Crowell, who is known for working in oils and cold wax. Now, she's an abstract artist, doesn't paint landscapes at all, but I wanted to learn how to incorporate that into my own work rather than replicate what she's trying to achieve. And I found it so liberating and so freeing. The cold wax gave me the thickness of the oil paints that I got with the impasto work that I was doing. But I completely changed how I actually work. So I moved away from using sketches and photographs, moved away from using palette knives for applying work, and started using the silicone tools, the squeegees. And I started layering my work really thinly on top of each other and using really, really bold colours, you know, colours that I wouldn't have even touched previously. And using those bold colours as base layers and just changing it, so rather than having a predetermined idea of what my painting was going to end up like, I just went with the process, which will sound a little bit odd in the sort of like, what do you mean we went with the process? The only thing I planned was colours. what colours I was going to use, and then I just mix them on the surface of my painting and allow them to blend, and just take cues from the painting. And when it came to sort of refining and resolving, that's when I'd be sort of making more considered marks and thinking about, you know, whether a cloud shape's working, or whether, you know, pathways are working in the landscape. So it completely changed how I worked. It becomes a lot more experimental, because I can just throw solvent at it. I can embed things into the painting, such as pigments and gold leaf and things like that, and it just feels more playful, I think. Yeah. Although I don't actually refer to sketches when I'm doing my larger paint, or any painting really, sketching is an important part of the process. It helps sort of hone my observational skills, and helps me sort of capture moments when I'm in a landscape as well. And I think it's an important part of your practice as an artist, to sort of, you know, continue sketching and playing, and not being precious about what's in that sketchbook. That's your time to play and just experiment with different mediums as well. So I will work on more than one painting at a time. But what I will end up doing is I'll start working on them, maybe 2 large ones at a time, and I will do the base layers first and that initial colour blending. But when it comes to starting to resolve the paintings, I can only concentrate on one at a time. It's far too much brain power trying to actually sort of figure out how to make a painting work. So I will have to sort of peel off and just focus on that. And what I tend to do is I will work on a collection, so that if the work's going to be exhibited together, that they all work together. So I'll make sure I'm using the same colour palette, and ensure that they just sit right. There's a similar theme, for instance. And the reason why I do that is most galleries that I work with will want a collection and a range of sizes as well. They don't all want sort of massive paintings. They want a good range and a good price range. It will only be if I'm submitting work for competitions that there might just be one that I'll do on its own. It sometimes depends on if there's a particular theme that a gallery, so I'm exhibiting in a gallery at the moment, and they've picked up on the Wuthering Heights theme, so I've kind of focused on moody moorlands, which, you know, how is that different from what I normally do, but even moodier moorlands. So sometimes it's that, I get a prompt from the gallery. A lot of the time it's out walking or going to another exhibition or seeing another artist's work, and there'll be a colour. There'll be a particular colour that I want to work with, and that will set me off on a whole new collection of work. So it is inspiration from other artists, galleries, you know, helping to frame a collection. That's where I start from, yeah. So I've got 2 rooms in the studio. This room is where I paint. So this is the messy room, which I know doesn't look very messy. I'm a very neat, tidy artist. So I've got all my cupboards with all my materials, and I've got a flat workbench for when I'm doing things like varnishing or working on smaller paintings. And then I've got the walls where I can actually paint vertically as well. And that's set up so I can actually, rather than using an easel, can move my paintings up and down, so that I'm not stretching too much and things like that. Then in the back room, I've got my office space, so that's where I do admin, because there's a lot of admin associated with running an art business. But also it's where I store my finished works and my prints and anything that I don't want to get messy at all. So it's a nice big space, and I'm very lucky to get the space actually. It's based within the craft house in Bingley, and they built it for me especially, so yeah, very lucky in that sense. So it's pretty much 9 to 5, so I will walk from home to here, which is most of the time a lovely walk along the canal, which kind of gets me in the right frame of mind for working. And generally I will spend an hour and a half doing admin, which doesn't sound very interesting at all, but it means that, you know, I'm doing something, I'm, you know, getting my mind ready, and depending on, you know, what projects I'm working on at the time. So at the moment I'm working on a joint book with my partner who's a poet, and so I'm doing this sort of design of that in the morning, but then in the afternoon I move into here and paint. So I try and keep them separate, making sure they're not encroaching on each other, and we'll dedicate specific time period for particular activities so that one's not taking over, so to speak. And then yeah, I'll paint in the afternoon, or if I have got a big collection on the go, I might just do an hour and a half of admin, get that out of the way, and then the rest of the day painting. And then walk home. And then if I'm sort of struggling in terms of resolving a particular painting, that walk home helps me hopefully helps me sort of try and work out where I need to start the next day. So one of my really favourite tools is these, which are basically brush combs. So they're great for mark making and scratching into your painting surface. So this is one that you can just get from online, but this is actually a vintage one. So who knew you actually needed a comb for a brush? And it's basically for getting hair out of your brushes. But never mind that, they're great for scratching into your painting. So they're great. Other mark making tools. I bought these Catalyst tools years and years and years ago. I was really disappointed because for some reason I thought they'd just be like a silicone squeegee kind of thing, and they weren't. But I've come back to them in the last 2 years, and they are great for mark making and just scratching into the surface of your painting. And these tools come with different edges, but it's these two in particular that I'm using quite a lot of. Squeegee, of course, you know, I'm not sure I'll be able to paint anymore without my squeegee. And this is nice because it's really flexible, and it sort of just sits quite nicely in your hand, this size. And then in terms of brushes, fan brush, so the squeegee I use an awful lot for blending colours, but when things need to be, you know, sort of more lightly blended, I will use this fan brush. And it's just an acrylic fan brush, you know, it's nothing special, just nice and soft. And also for blending, I will use one of these Da Vinci Fit synthetics as well. Again, really lovely tools. Then, I mean, you know, I could go on forever. Pigment sticks and oil bars. R&F pigment sticks are just absolutely lush, they really are. And I didn't use them all that much up until recently. I tended to use them just to sort of get some marks down on the surface of my boards before I start painting. But I've started using them quite a lot when I'm sort of, when my paint's starting to dry, to sort of start working into my painting, and they are just so lush. So these are made with wax as well, and with oils. And then Senelia have brought out some larger oil pastels, which are quite different from the ones that they used to use. These are really soft, and the colours are beautiful. So there we go. I work on my own, so I don't necessarily see anybody. So there are no other artist studios here at all. So having the opportunity to teach people means I actually get to meet other creative people, and even people who've not painted since they were at school. And it's just really nice to be amongst other people who are eager to learn and to share some of my knowledge and techniques with them, so that they can sort of, help them develop their own practice as well. So it's partly selfishly, I just, having that exposure to other people and, finding out what they do. I learn just as much from them as they do from me. And sometimes it ends up in being sort of resulting in some collaborations and things like that. So it's really making sure I just don't sit here and like a hermit, not see anybody, but also making sure that I can sort of share some techniques as well. So I do face-to-face teaching with people who prefer to come and work with me for a day or 3 or 4 days, and that's mainly in West Yorkshire. I've kind of cut down on my face-to-face teaching because I had a really busy year last year. I was teaching over in Canada and Ireland, so I kind of want to just spend more time in Yorkshire at home. But I do an awful lot of online teaching as well. I've got a number of online courses because I've got quite a lot of people based in North America in particular, who some people do travel across, but obviously not everybody can afford to do that or have the time or the money to do that. And so my online courses, especially if it's just an introduction to oil and cold wax, is more suitable for people who can't travel. Yeah, so I never imagined I'd write a book, and basically Rachel, the commissioning editor from Crowwood Press, got in touch with me, sent me an email and asking me if I wanted to write a book. Now initially I thought it was spam, and my partner is a poet and used to sort of working with publishing houses. So I said, hey, take a look at this is a laugh, isn't it? And once he picked himself up off the floor at the idea of me writing a book, we realised it wasn't spam and the publishers were serious. So they'd seen that I run workshops and thought that a book on my techniques and my practice would be a good addition to their collection. So yeah, as I say, I didn't think I'd ever write a book, and it was hard work. Doesn't come naturally in terms of writing, but once I got into the swing of it, obviously I teach people, so I kind of can break down my process, and I have broken down my process before for teaching, so that made it a little bit easier. But yes, it was about a year's worth of work. I did most of the writing over the winter of 24-25, and I needed to change how I worked quite a lot because I couldn't work in my office space writing because there were too many other distractions. I'd just be sort of pulled into here to paint. So I got myself some noise cancelling headphones and took myself up to the cafe upstairs and squirreled away. And just sort of had lots of food delivered to me over the whole day, and just sort of broke the back of it. Took myself off to Cornwall for 2 weeks away from family, shut myself away to sort of, write a few chapters, that kind of thing. But yeah, completely different way of working. I'm really pleased with the result. It's a beautiful book, but I probably won't be writing another one in the near future. Hopefully 2026 is going to be quieter. I've cut down on a lot of travelling for teaching this year, just to be home and to get back into the flow of painting. So I've got some new galleries that I'm working with, so I'm focusing very much on painting and developing my own practice, which feels like a luxury, but it is kind of like, I'm an artist, this is what I should be doing. So doing that, and also collaborating with Nick, my partner, on a publication around moorland and that kind of thing, sort of celebrating where we live and the things that we love to do as well. So my advice is don't hang around waiting for inspiration. Just crack on, get some paint onto your canvas, onto your boards, whatever. The action of actually doing something will start to create inspiration for you. If you're just going to hang around and wait for the perfect moment, the perfect idea, the perfect studio, then you could be waiting an awful long time.
If you would like to see Paula's work in the flesh, you can find it at the Biscuit Factory in Newcastle, Saltbox Gallery in Helmsley, Lion Street Gallery in Hay-on-Wye, and the Whitehouse Gallery in Kirkcudbright. You can also pick up a copy of her book, Atmospheric Landscapes Using Oils and Cold Wax, from our online shop.